Welcome to Psyche Magic, a podcast about self-discovery and the subconscious, where we explore the symbolic language of dreams, tarot, and archetypes. I'm your host, Jordan Hale. I'm a psychotherapist based in Nashville, Tennessee. Each episode, I'll hold a casual conversation with various artists and healers about their shadow work practices. We pull tarot cards, unpack a significant dream or dream theme, and discuss their personal healing arts practices. So please grab a cup of something delicious and stay a while. While aspects of this podcast may feel therapeutic, it is never meant to take the place of therapy. Welcome back to Psyche Magic. Spring is right around the corner here in the Northern Hemisphere, and I can feel new life beginning to stir beneath the surface of my gardens, both literal and figurative. I'm heading into my birthday week as I write this, March 7th, and I would say I tend to mark this time of year as my true beginning of each new year. Emerging from winter, shaking off the sleep of hibernation with some fresh ideas and this gentle current of excitement and possibility buzzing through me. Speaking of which, we have just started a new series on Substack, Spell Work for the Subconscious. Twice a month around the full and new moons, I will choose a different reader-selected dream symbol to interpret, and for just $5 a month or $50 a year, paid subscribers will receive journaling prompts, a guided meditation, and a custom ritual to work with each symbol's meaning more deeply and integrate it more personally. This first issue is about the symbol of the snake, which was touched upon in our last episode, number 46, with Becca Neighbor, one of my favorite dream symbols and one that Carl Jung himself called the single most common symbol of transcendence. So be sure to join us there if you haven't already at psychemagic.substack.com. I've been planning this extra special episode for you all as a way to pay tribute to one of the most magical creative beings I can think of, David Lynch. His recent passing shocked and shook so many of his adoring fans, myself and today's podcast guest, Michael McMillian, included. My dear friend Michael is an actor, writer, and creator and co-host of the Bigfoot Collectors Club podcast. He was also my very first podcast guest and one of the first people to encourage me to create this very show. He is someone I look up to as an example of a creative and sensitive being who is committed to what David Lynch would have called the art life. That is, a self-led pledge to center the arts in his life and livelihood in an ongoing and ever-evolving way. Michael and I were blessed with a poignant Lynchian message via our tarot pull. We discussed Lynch's appearances in both of our dreams and our enduring love and reverence for his work and creative philosophies. I've been thinking a lot about something Lynch shared in the Art Life documentary, that for some reason his mother never let him buy coloring books as a child, but his siblings could. He got the sense that she thought it might stifle some kind of creativity that she felt was unique to him, and that it was part of her job to help cultivate and preserve. I'm hoping I can give my own daughter Iris a similar gift, to be able to pick up on the subtleties of her creative spirit and do my best to help her usher it in the purest form possible. And for those of us who are on a journey of healing our inner child, perhaps this can be a reminder about the gift of encouraging creative ingenuity. With that, let's get into our conversation in tribute to David Lynch with Michael McMillian. Michael McMillian, welcome back to Psyche Magic. I'm so
Thanks
glad you're
for
here.
having me. Thank you. I'm so happy to be here,
You're so
especially
welcome.
to talk about one of my favorite human beings
Oh,
that's ever existed that I never met, David Lynch.
I know, but I feel the same way. And I feel like so many others had such a connection to him. So I'm so happy that you're here, Michael, and that you want to pay tribute to David Lynch with me today. This episode has been kind of a long time coming. I mean, he passed away a little while ago now, but I've just been thinking a lot about how I want to approach, like, where to begin with someone who
Yeah,
just has such an expansive reach. So I feel like we've narrowed it down to the direction that we're going to go, and I'm excited to get into it. So yay.
great.
Whee! Okay, so we're going to start the show like we always do, which is that we're going to pull a tarot card. And today, I'm going to just put it out there that I would love a sort of David Lynch themed message for us. So if the universe has that in store for us, we welcome it. And I'm going to just shuffle a little bit here.
Yeah, I'm projecting that mental
Me too.
image as well.
Yes, exactly. Like just welcoming whatever shows up, just getting in that
Oh, I see what it
Lynchian
is.
vibe. You see it already? Ooh,
Yeah.
yes. Okay. Oh, I like this card. This is a good one. Okay. So we have the Four of Cups. For listeners who might not be familiar with this card, there's a figure sitting under a tree in sort of like a meditative crisscross posture.
I
He has
mean,
his arms crossed as well. I know, right?
this already.
I
I mean,
know.
even the image of the card is Lynchian, but I mean, already, here we go.
Right? I know. Oh, I have chills. So he's in this sort of meditative posture. There are three cups in front of him, just lined up in a row. And then there's another cup being presented to him. And there's this hand, right, coming out of this cloud presenting another cup to this figure. So Four of Cups. Okay, Michael, obviously,
Yeah.
immediate connection, right?
Yeah.
Like what comes up for you?
Well, first, obviously the TM, transcendental
Yes.
meditation, the fact that this figure is meditating under a tree, and just the image of a cloud with a hand presenting a cup just feels like something that would be out of Twin Peaks or some other,
Yes.
Lynchian, special effect. So it's I think it's very David Lynch.
I agree.
And I have a very good friend of mine who studied TM at the David Lynch Foundation.
Really?
Yeah, he was actually an actor, Eric Edelstein. He was actually an actor in Twin Peaks: The Return. He played one of the three detective brothers. He was the guy who's chuckling all the time. And he really got into TM. He's promised me, because I've been wanting to do it for a while, that he's working on getting me connected with the foundation as well. But he worked with David Lynch. He meditated through his, school. And then, so for me personally, if I'm taking a personal signal from this card, it would be, hey, follow up with Eric and, check out TM. And
there's something for you here.
I feel like that's what David Lynch would want us to be focusing on right now.
I do too.
And when he died, I'm sure I know how much his work meant to you. I had such a profound reaction when I found out that he died. Like, I sat down in my living room and I sobbed. Like, I really, really had an emotional reaction to it for a person that I never met before. I think the only two, like, celebrity deaths that impacted me even close to this were Bowie and Philip Seymour Hoffman. But this just felt like such a loss. And obviously, he's a person that I've really wanted to work with in my career and was like holding out hope, even with the news of his health being bad, that like maybe it would be possible to make it happen. But I just really felt that he's one of the good guys. He's a good person, and it just sucks when we lose somebody that good. But there was a big nationwide or global, actually, meditation that the David Lynch Foundation did online.
Yeah.
The week that he died, on his birthday.
Yes.
And so a few days after he died, and I logged on to that.
Oh,
And, some of the like leaders from the David Lynch Foundation like led a giant group meditation. I think there were over 10,000 people on the call. And they
wow.
just emphasized how like this is what he would want us to be focusing on in his death
Mhm.
is meditating and feeling connected and rising above, negative thoughts and all of that stuff. So
Yes.
it was really cool to participate in that. And that moment for me, it made me go, okay, this is a way that I can carry the work of an artist that I really admire into my life. And so I need to be practicing meditation.
I love hearing that, Michael. I didn't know, just as a friend, as someone who like loves and cares about you, I love hearing that you felt so connected. And we can get into this, but I don't
Hmm.
know about what transcendental meditation is specifically and how it differs from other types of mindful meditative practices, right? Yogic practices.
Hmm.
I'm not sure of the difference, but I do completely agree and feel, especially when we pull this card, that David Lynch is trying to leave this legacy for all of us of how profound and important it is to connect to ourselves and each other regularly and to have a practice around that, right? The cups
Hmm.
is the suit of the emotions, the intuition. And so he's saying, don't lose that connection. Don't let yourself lose that. Stay connected. I love that that's what came through. So yeah, what can you share about TM that you've learned or that makes you interested in that branch of meditation specifically?
Well, I don't know a ton about it other than I have friends who practice it who swear by it.
Yeah.
And again, I also think that like it's not necessarily that it's like TM or bust. Like I think any meditation, I think
Yeah.
even the message we got on the group meditation, they were like, if you don't practice TM, that's okay. Just
Yeah.
take this moment to meditate, clear your mind, let, when the thoughts come and release, and let's just have this moment for all of us. But I do know that it's one of those things where you get a mantra assigned to
Okay.
you. And that mantra is supposed to be yours and it's a private thing, but you get your own mantra that connects you to the meditative state. That's literally all I know about it, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Except that I've heard it's really helped people get out of their own way, manifest the projects that they're trying to bring into
Exactly.
existence. And it's done wonders. And in a place where we're all, I think, just getting pummeled with stress and strife, this day and age, and also
Disconnection.
disconnection. And, I've had like a personal rough 12 months
Hmm.
with just things out of my control. Like the idea that I can sort of like quiet all the negative thoughts in my head and all the fear and anxiety and just like, you know, get a little sense of, and I know that TM is also twice a day. That's the other thing. You do it for
Oh,
like 20 minutes in the morning and 20 minutes in the evening.
okay.
And that's part of the practice as well. So I'm going to follow through with it. And I think it's funny because I think a lot of, like me, I think a lot of the reason my friends got into it was because it was something that David Lynch did. And
Exactly.
they're like, well, if he likes this,
I'm influenced
if it
by this
works for
person.
him.
Yeah.
And I'm not sure if this is confirmed, but after he had died and after we did this group meditation, the David Lynch Foundation released over their Instagram that David Lynch had passed while meditating.
Really?
Yeah, and I think the cause of death was a heart attack. I think it was like a cardio event.
Like complications from
Yeah,
emphysema. Yeah.
yeah, I'm sure. But they said that he was meditating when he died,
Wow.
which if for nothing else to be able to like be in that moment if you know that you are passing
Yeah.
sounds like a pretty incredible tool to ease the body through that
Yeah,
transition,
absolutely.
you know?
Absolutely. I know, to sort of usher himself into that
Hmm.
transition by just connecting to all that is. That's beautiful. I didn't know that. And that makes perfect sense.
Yeah.
That is a Lynchian message if I ever saw one, right? And I think it also speaks to, the dichotomy in his work. Like so much of his work is so dark and intense, and it brings those sort of shadow elements to the surface. But
Hmm.
he, as a person, was very much like a love and light person, like in the way that he presented himself to the world and in his relationships. Like there was so much openness, positivity, hopefulness with the shadow, with the darkness. So I love that there's both, and we'll make room for that here.
I think he is a love and light guy. Even the dark stuff, the movies with dark stuff,
Hmm.
there's always a light side to all of it. You
Hmm.
know, there's a lot of light and love in the town of Twin Peaks, even though there's a
Yes.
dark side to it as well. If you look at The Couple in Wild at Heart, like
Okay. Yes.
obviously very heavy, dark stuff there, but also a lot of light and positivity.
Yeah.
And in Blue Velvet, it's the idea of in the neighborhood, in this sort of like 1950s picturesque neighborhood, you find a severed ear, you know? And he talks about that in The Art Life, how he had a happy childhood.
Yes.
He believed in the sort of like cherry pie and coffee and the American diner. And he's not making fun of those things. He's not cynical about those things.
Yeah.
He loves those things, but he's also fascinated that there's something underneath, that there is that people contain a dark side, that there is a dark underbelly to a lot of what we experience. I think in particular with his movies, if we're talking about his movies, with American life as well.
Yeah,
you know?
exactly. Exactly. And he also talks in, I believe it's in The Art Life, about that sort of traumatic experience that
With
he
the
had
woman.
as a child. Yeah, where he and his brother saw this bloody woman just walking down like a picturesque suburban street. And of course, they had no information or context as to what was going on. And it was really terrifying. But I think that image stuck with him. Like, oh, there is something else that is possible in these types of idyllic environments, right? That we're made to believe are the end all be all. There's always more, and we have to make space for that. So, yeah, I really admire and try to, like, in my own work and in my own life, try to emulate that by like making space for the shadow and the darkness without getting subsumed by it. Like, that's such a tricky balance. And he just was such a master at that.
Yeah,
so yeah,
totally.
We have to let listeners know about our Twin Peaks connection, Michael,
Okay, yes,
because
please.
I think it's just so fun. Michael and I and my husband, Daniel, we all had separately started watching Twin Peaks unbeknownst to each other at the exact same time in our lives. And so when we realized, like, yeah, I'm watching Twin Peaks, I'm just randomly picking up on this, like, decades old now series, and realized that we were both on that journey together. We kind of just stayed on that track at the same time, and ended up just really getting so much out of the show and sharing with each other. And so I think it's fun that like that impacted us at the same time in our lives, and then has unfolded in the way that it has since then. But yeah, just a little synchronicity, right? But that was just like, it was there for us at the exact same moment.
It was. And then I had another friend, our mutual friend David back home, kind of hopped on that train as well. So, I mean, that's a thing that I should say, was I came into the majority of David Lynch's work pretty late into life. Like I was in my late 30s when I really got into him. I'd seen Mulholland Drive when it came out. Twin Peaks was tough for a while because I had wanted to watch it, but for a while you couldn't get the pilot because there was like a music rights issue.
Oh.
And then I remember starting it on Netflix probably 10, 11, 12 years ago. And the pilot wasn't even on Netflix. So you missed the whole introduction of every character. And I remember stopping and going, well, I'm not going to watch this until I can see it all. It wasn't on DVD because of the rights issues. So I think for a lot of people our age, and I'm older than you, Jordan, but I was too young when you were definitely too young. I was too young when it came out. I was like, I could have watched it. I was in the 5th or 6th grade, I think, when Twin Peaks originally aired. I remember being very aware of it as a cultural phenomenon. I remember knowing the phrase, "Who killed Laura Palmer?" I remember seeing it everywhere. I remember like the rise of Laura Flynn Boyle as a star. I was aware of what I remember, the Log Lady. So I kind of like, Lynch was always somebody that like existed in the corners of my pop culture references. I went to school with his son, Austin, at
Really?
Interlock, and he lived across the hall from me. There's
Oh,
a
wow.
very good chance that I have like shaken hands with David Lynch
Yeah.
or been in, he's been in the hallway in the dorm at the same time I was. But again, at 16, 17, 18, I wasn't super aware of who I knew what Eraserhead was, but I hadn't seen it.
Yeah.
So I don't think I'd seen anything until Mulholland Drive. And Mulholland Drive blew my mind, and it confounded me and it confused me.
Yeah.
But I was fascinated by it. It was like unlike anything I'd ever seen before. But it took me a long time to go back and catch up on his other work. And when I found Twin Peaks at the same time you did, I got the box set from Twin Peaks from Z to A, which is on Blu-ray. And I was like, boom, perfect. Now I have all of this. I can knock it all out. And I just watched this and I was like, I cannot believe I've never seen this show. It's influenced every TV show I've ever loved.
Yes.
I was a huge X-Files fan, and obviously there's just like TV would not exist the way it did today. It's in many ways the first premium cable drama, even though it was on ABC.
Even though it was on a network. I know.
Which is wild.
I know.
The idea of having a serialized drama that wasn't like a procedural week to week to week to week. That was a quote unquote crime drama. I just could not believe that I had never seen it. And it quickly became my favorite show.
Yeah.
And I think I appreciate it more having seen it when I did. And having also, I do this podcast, Bigfoot Collectors Club, which is all about high strangeness. It's all about interdimensional experiences, UFOs, cryptids. And there's a lot of that stuff laced into Twin Peaks. And in fact, before I watched Twin Peaks, I had watched Lost Highway because it just happened to be available. And I was late one night being like, what am I going to watch? And I loved Lost Highway. And I was like, okay, now's the time to do Twin Peaks. So I forgot that Lost Highway was kind of the catalyst for this. Yeah. And that's a movie that I sort of want to talk about at some point today, because I really think there's a lot of connection to that movie and Dreams. But anyway, it's my favorite show now. It really made me fall in love with David Lynch. And it's one of those things where I don't go a day without thinking about something from Twin Peaks.
It has just made its way into my psyche and my being, and I reference it constantly. And it's the most fun I've ever had watching a TV show. I can say that wholeheartedly. And it is extremely funny and whimsical and joyous, and also some of the darkest material I've ever consumed at the same time.
Oh, yeah.
Right? That's the intoxicating cocktail for me that just keeps me going back to it.
Well, I just rewatched the pilot yesterday because yesterday was Twin Peaks Day, and I have an annual tradition now where the night before I watch Fire Walk with Me.
Okay.
Because it ends the night before.
Yes.
And then in the morning of February 24th, I will watch the pilot because it kicks off that morning when Laura Palmer's body is found.
Right.
And rewatching the pilot I always make sure on the DVD that I have the Log Lady intros that were added later.
Those are so great.
And she even says at the beginning in her first intro, she says, some of these stories are funny. Some of them are weird, but some of them are also dark. Some of them are traumatic. She said, but they all have one thing in common, which is they all share a mystery about them. And she said, the mystery of life. Right.
Oh, beautiful.
And that I went, man, I didn't catch, I'm now watching this for the umpteenth time, and I haven't caught that thing and the idea that the unifying theme for all the different tones in Twin Peaks is mystery and the mystery of life specifically.
The celebration of that. That, I have to mention this now while I'm thinking about it, but that was one of my favorite little tidbits from Lynch Oz, which I revisited lately.
And I have not seen it yet, which is wild. But
there was this beautiful moment where they said that when David Lynch wants something really special from his actors, he'll say more wind. And when he says more wind, what he means is more mystery. Give me the mystery of this moment. Make it a little more obscure. And I just love that. I think that just really encapsulates so much of what he was trying to do, is to keep the mystery alive.
Yeah. And I love that he says, I can't remember where he says this, but that the idea of life not having answers, life not being completely explainable. Why should movies have all the answers? Why
That's
should
right.
stories be all explainable? And I just love that in the era where movies were becoming more and more commercial and more four quadrant based,
Yeah.
and in an era that we're living in now where everything has to play globally, and so everything sort of gets like watered down and factory processed into what's the most palatable.
It's a product.
It's a product, and film has always been a product, and I think like in a sense, like certainly with Hollywood, but I think there was an age where like there was more room for big swings and
Yes.
experimental
Art.
art. And David Lynch is somebody who is making abstract art in the medium of film
Yes.
and being, I mean, relatively successful at it.
Yes.
You know what I mean? Even though so many of his movies did not make money, but he somehow managed to traverse that entire landscape. Twin Peaks: The Return is a 18-hour plus movie
Yeah.
that was being made and distributed at a time when like Marvel reigned supreme at the box office. And
Sure.
I love Marvel movies, don't get me wrong, I love all that stuff, but I just wonder now that we don't have him, are we going to lose that completely, because it's hard to, and I know that there are so many young and exciting filmmakers, but I don't know, even in this system of commercial filmmaking, who's going to be able to come up and break through, because he got movies made because he was David Lynch, because Eraserhead was such an underground hit, and then because The Elephant Man was such a huge success.
Yeah.
And that even after Dune bombed, he was able to, he recovered from Dune by making Blue Velvet, which is like many consider to be his masterpiece.
Exactly.
I would argue that the Twin Peaks: The Return is probably his masterpiece. And I would put Mulholland Drive in that category as well. But I just don't know who's going to make stuff like this anymore.
I know, because what I learned about his life from revisiting some of these documentaries is that he had this fierce commitment to what he called the art life, right? Like, there is no plan B for me but to make art, and make art constantly. That's all I want to do. And for him, that looked like, when he was younger, that looked like going to a studio to paint every single day, all day, instead of going a traditional route, going to school, right? Trying to learn something, trying to learn a trade. Yeah. He just wanted to paint. And he knew, I think this is so brilliant too. And this is where I will admit, like, I get tripped up oftentimes as someone who values art and making art. He knew that he had to make a lot of crappy art in order to find something real inside what he was doing. And so he was, in a sense, he was allowing himself the time and space to get a lot of this stuff out of his system that was just noise, right? Kind of like our constant mental chatter that we all have to sort of sift through in order to find an idea that feels poignant, resonant, real, authentic, and meaningful, right?
Yeah.
But he did not give up on that process ever. And I just think that so many of us don't have the wherewithal to commit to that the way that he did.
I don't think so either. I think that's what really makes him special.
Yes.
And I think that's, whatever his personality and biochemical makeup is. That's who he was. Yeah, like that's who he was. And that's why he was special. And I think most of us can't function that way.
Yeah.
Even as somebody who's like pursued a career in the arts, I get very stuck in the mundane aspects of life of like, okay, now I gotta go to the store. I'm running out of dog food, all of this stuff. Like, because you also have to do that. And I guarantee you that David Lynch had somebody in his life that was
Yeah.
making sure the bills were being paid.
Yes.
You know what I mean? Like, not
Such a
saying that
good point.
not that they're paying for him, but like, I feel like he must have had somebody that was like running admin in his life,
Yeah.
where most of us have to do that ourselves,
Good
and that
point.
takes away.
Good point.
But I just don't have that natural. I said early on, I was like, even going to art school and like, pursuing theater, I've never had an interest in being a starving artist. I don't like it. I don't like the idea of it. I've always wanted to find a balance between like getting what I like to do and getting paid for it,
Yeah, exactly. Like a
And
sort of lifestyle. Yeah.
and at 46 and having ups and downs in my careers, I don't know if that's really the most inspirational way to approach this.
Right. It's just real.
But I can't do what he does. I wish I could, but I can't.
Yeah. This is why we're celebrating him.
Yeah.
And this is
Yeah.
why we're inspired to draw from him, right? Even if he was just such a singular mind, there are aspects of the way that he worked and the way he saw the world that we can take. And that even a fraction of a Lynchian mindset is, I think, a catalyst for more beauty and creativity in the world. And that's worth celebrating.
Well, just anybody whose work also inspires you to think less literally about
Yes.
the world is inspiring.
Mhm.
And to take things less literally in an age where everyone is taking everything so literally,
Mhm.
down to religious texts that have existed
Mhm.
for thousands and thousands of years. And you said this one thing, that means you mean all of these, that you must
Yeah.
believe all of this stuff. Like, we're being suffocated by taking things literally. We
Yeah.
have completely lost the ability to look for deeper meaning and to interpret
Mhm.
the world symbolically. And I think
Mhm.
David Lynch made art that made you stop and reanalyze the way that
Yeah.
you look at your reality.
Yes.
And we really need that, right?
It's really for me in my life, it's been very healing to
Mhm.
learn that not everything has to be black or white. There is room for mystery. And when we live symbolically and view our life, our world, our inner world symbolically, there's room for interpretation always. And that's expansive and life-giving, right? That creates more room for connection and interconnection and understanding.
Yes,
Right?
and where people get frustrated with his movies not always having like a tidy ending. And frankly, there are a number of his movies that have a tidy ending.
Yeah.
You can argue Dune has a tidy ending, whether the movie's successful or not. I think Wild at Heart has a tidy ending. I think The Straight Story has a tidy ending. And by tidy ending, I think what I'm saying is like a happy ending where you're like, okay, everything kind of gets resolved at the
Sort of
end,
formulaic. Yeah.
and the good guys win in the end. For all the people that get frustrated with that, I go, well, this is what I like about his work is it does leave room to interpret. What did
Yeah.
it mean to you? What
That's
does
right.
this mean? What do you think the story? What do you think is happening in Twin Peaks? What happened at the end of that whole thing? Is there room for more? Is this, now we know this will be, that is the end, but I think that it was always intended to be the end. And I was really hoping, really keeping my fingers crossed that he might come back and do one more movie to sort of mirror
Yeah.
Fire Walk with Me. So we'd have a series and a movie. But that's what I like about it. Look, I love Raiders of the Lost Ark. I'll rewatch Raiders of the Lost Ark over and over and over again. But I'm not thinking about what does Raiders mean. I think
Sure.
people who are fascinated by good populist movies are oftentimes going, what did in a way that we do with Lynch, like, look at how Spielberg told the story. Look at what a piece of perfect like storytelling this movie is. But I don't think we're diving deeper into the meaning of Indiana Jones in the way that we're diving deeper into the meaning of like Agent Dale Cooper or Laura Palmer or any of the characters in Twin Peaks.
Mm-hmm. I absolutely agree completely. And that's just, for me, that's also part of what I guess just keeps me engaged and excited about just my own creativity and my own potential, because David Lynch would say that if we can go into that sort of, meditative subconscious place where we take our inner world seriously, where we take our dream material seriously, then we can find ideas that are powerful and resonant and that mean something to us collectively, right? And so that's just what keeps me coming back to his work. Like, it's not rewatchable in the way that Indiana Jones is, just like have a great fun ride on this story and I know what's going to happen. It's rewatchable in the sense of like, I keep asking myself new and better questions about life and about character and about humanity. And it's just so exciting.
And that's not to say there aren't parts of Twin Peaks in particular that are just comfort. You know what I mean?
Sure.
That are just there to be silly and fun.
Even the score, like I just get back in that like vibe, and I just love to throw it on for that alone.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. No, it's good. Every now and then I'm just like, I need to hear the Twin Peaks theme right now.
Too.
And I just have to put it on.
Me too. I know. I have it on one of my playlists that I listen to like all the time. And whenever it pops up, I'm just like, yes, this is what I need right now.
On that note, we're going to take a quick break and we'll be right back.
Okay, now I want to segue for a second because I know you said you want to talk about some of the way that David Lynch works with dreams and dream material in his filmmaking. But I also remember you said that you had a dream about David Lynch like pretty shortly after he died. Or maybe it was just after we talked about doing this podcast. Remind me and share it if you like, please.
I think it was actually a night or two before you reached out to do this. So this has been a week or two ago, maybe at this point. There was really nothing special about it, but it was a dream where I was suddenly a part of his friends and family circle.
Yeah.
And I was with everyone at what in the dream I assumed was his home. And people were there, had been mourning for him. And there were a lot of like actors from his projects. I remember like Alicia Witt was there from, Twin Peaks and Dune. And he appeared to me and showed me a table that was full of all of these things that he wanted, his like heirlooms that he wanted certain people to have. In the dream, he told me it was like my responsibility to get these things to the assigned people. So, and I remember thinking like, oh, I'm talking to David Lynch, even though he's dead. And I'm talking to him as if he's somebody that I've known my whole life, even though I've never met him.
Sure.
Right. And so it was like this very gentle dream. And that was kind of it, Then the rest of the dream, I'm like, I think this Amazon gift card is supposed to go to you, like just this very weird thing. There was no big special, like profound breakthrough or message in it.
Yeah.
But it stuck with me. And I remember waking up and being like, oh, that was really vivid. And that was really, I told my friend Eric about it. He's like, buddy, that's how you met him. You ended up meeting him. You met him in a dream.
Absolutely. And he wouldn't have it any other way.
Yeah. So I do think that it was just it was just anytime I think David Lynch shows up in a dream, and that's the only time that I can think of, it's just kind of a cool guest appearance. It's a cool sign.
Okay. But it's funny that you put it that way. First of all, I love that. And I love that when I look at dreams and look at the way that I read dreams symbolically, I always think about like, what is the sort of emotional quality of this dream, right? And for you, it was connection, right? Like there is something here for me to carry forward, right? And that is meaningful. That's something that, like you said, stays with you. And I too have had David Lynch appear in dreams to me, not recently, but I went back through my dream journal and I found a couple different guest appearances that he had made for me as well. And he always appears in my dreams as this sort of creative ambassador or like totem of creativity, where he's in my dream and he's doing something. He's ushering me into some kind of creative experience. And so we're either like making a film together, or I'm like talking with friends about his work and what his work has meant to me in terms of like embracing the good, the bad, the ugly, the lovely of life.
Wow.
And I think that some people are meant to transmit messages to us, right? And I think David Lynch was one of those people. And I think it persists even after he's gone. He can continue just like having those waves of influence, inspiration. And that's incredible.
Oh, yeah. My co-host on Bigfoot Collectors Club, Riley Bray, who's a musician, and we have this music track up on our Patreon. But he told a story. It's really not mine to tell, but the nutshell of it was he had a dream where he met David Lynch next to like a piano on a beach.
Yeah.
And he composed a piece of music
Ugh.
with David Lynch there. And he woke up and he wrote the music. So he's got this piece that he wrote in a dream
Beautiful.
with David Lynch in his presence, So I really think this applies to a lot of us that love his work. He really is this creative ambassador and this sort of creative angel in a way.
Yes.
I don't know. It's weird because almost the way that I talk about him, it sounds like he's a guru or some sort of, figure in that sense. And it's not that way for me. It's just he really is an inspiring guy, and also I think a good guy.
I was going to say it's so pure. It's so pure. There's no ego with it.
Yeah. But that's great. I love that. I've welcomed many more David Lynch dreams, please.
I do too. I know. I would love for that thread to continue sort of pulling on me, on my consciousness. Okay, let's talk about dreams in his work because it's just such a profound theme that he works with and that he utilizes. Obviously, Twin Peaks, this shows up all the time. The episode that I love so much, which is episode 3, which is called Zen or the Skill to Catch a Killer.
Yeah.
We just love that. But this is the episode where Dale Cooper, one, performs that really incredible sort of Tibetan Buddhist like energy testing method where he's like listing the suspects' names on a board
throwing the rocks
to break the glass. And the one that breaks it is the one that they need to pursue. Right.
And that is the scene that hooked me forever.
Me too.
I was enjoying it up until then. But when I got there, I went, okay, you have my attention.
I know.
Now you're talking to me in ways that and then I'm like, when did this was in 1990 on network TV? Come on. I got very excited.
Incredible. So mysterious, so avant-garde. I felt the exact same way. I was hooked at that moment. And then this is the same episode where Dale Cooper has his dream at the end of the episode where Bob appears to him and Mike is speaking in riddles, right? And he goes to is it the Black Lodge or the White Lodge at the end of that episode?
He sees the giant in that Is that when the giant appears for the first time?
I believe
or is that
so.
Later?
I believe so. And at the end of the episode, there's the little person who's doing the dance.
That's the Black Lodge. Yeah, he's there in the Black Lodge.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. Yes. And so that
the man
again,
from another place.
Yes. And again, I'm in.
Or the
I'm
arm.
hooked. He has a dream. He knows. He picks up the phone and tells Harry, "I know who killed Laura Palmer." And I'm like, let's do this.
Yeah. And then he
amazing.
Can't remember specifically who it is,
Right.
but he knows he's been told. So yeah, quite literally, he's able to begin to solve the crime through dream. And we also know, as the show goes on, that it isn't just a dream, that he actually was traveling to another place, which I think many of us often wonder if that's what dreams are, if we are traveling to another time and place or an alternate dimension, or where I had a dream the other night where I was in London with my dearly departed bulldog, Albie.
Aww.
And I remember being like, Albie's back, because I have Albie dreams a lot where he comes and hangs out with me and he looked good. He was in his prime. And I was hanging out with people that don't really exist in my reality, but they were real people to me in my dreams. I was like staying with some friends there. And one of the guys was like, wait a minute, so this dog died? And I was like, yeah, he died, but every now and then he comes back to life, And the guy kind of looked at me, scratching his head, and I said, well, oh, yeah, here's the thing. This isn't really happening right now. Like, I'm this isn't real life. I'm actually asleep in Los Angeles right now, and I'm dreaming that I'm here in London with everybody. I just kind of said it very matter of factly, and then the dream continued on. And so it was sort of lucid, but not really lucid at the same time. It was just a fact that I accepted.
Like awareness. Yeah.
And when I woke up, I was smiling, and it was like one of the most relaxing, happy dreams I'd had in a very long time. And I went, man, I feel like I almost went to another place, that I was in some place else on the astral plane or somewhere in the astral realm. And that's what Twin Peaks is all about, that these dreams aren't just dreams, that you are actually receiving messages from other intelligences outside of your subconscious.
Yes.
Or that it's all connected, that the subconscious is all connected to this larger realm of the subconscious, and that there are real
tapping in,
thinking, living, sentient energies and beings that are in that realm that we are all connected to.
Absolutely. You'll love this. I've heard David Lynch put it this way when he talks about his sort of creative process, catching those ideas, catching the big fish through meditation, through going into the subconscious. He says that he envisions it like, okay, there's a curtain, of course, because he was obsessed with curtains.
Yeah.
But there's a curtain, and on the other side of the curtain, the jigsaw puzzle is all complete. But the forces, the mysterious forces that be, are passing one piece at a time through the curtain for you, right?
Yes, yeah. I've heard this, and I love that. Yeah, so it's great. You're like, what am I assembling? I'm not even sure what I'm assembling.
I don't even know, but
here.
I'm just going to keep gathering these pieces and just trusting the process, right?
Yeah, I feel like he's a filmmaker who made movies in like a painter paints, sort of like assembling the piece one bit of light at a time, one color at a time. And, obviously he's worked with other writers as well. So, and there are certain movies that have way more of a like narrative track than others, but certainly on The Return, Twin Peaks: The Return, it really seemed that he was sort of not making it up as he went along, but, he shot that all like a movie at once and wasn't doing the usual. People listening to this may not know, but typically, when you're shooting a television series, you are shooting an episode. Let's say the pilot's already been made, so you get picked up and you start working on episode 2 maybe a year after you've done the pilot. And then as you're filming episode 2, you have, because it's such a quick turnaround week to week, you have next week's director already prepping the next episode, and the cast will take a lunch break at some point and read next week's episode before you're done filming this week's episode. And while that's happening over in the writer's room, they're not even done breaking the whole season yet. They might be 3 or 4 episodes ahead in drafts, and casting is starting to cast some of those characters that are going to come in the next couple weeks or two. So it's really this sort of assembly line where you're building the tracks as the train's moving along. But with The Return and David Lynch, what he did was he sort of said, no, I'm going to film this whole thing like a movie, and I'm going to come. He didn't know everything that was going to make it in the final cut. And I don't think, from what I've heard, nothing really made it on the cutting room floor. But originally it was supposed to be 9 episodes. And he went, nope, it's going to be bigger. It's going to be longer. I don't know where I'm going with this yet. And to me, that's like a painter, right? Like with a big canvas and saying, all right, it's not done till it's done,
Right. Well, and that's how he started out. I mean, he was first and foremost a painter. He maintained that artistic medium and form throughout his entire life.
Mm-hmm. But yeah, then there's ways that I think dreams come into his work that are more symbolic or thematic and even down to structure and not so literal as it is in Twin Peaks. Like Mulholland Drive and Lost Highway are 2 really good examples, and I'll use Lost Highway because I watched it most recently. But those are 2 movies where there are big narrative and reality shifts halfway through the movie, and the movie, suddenly you're following characters. Like in Lost Highway, Bill Pullman literally transforms into a different character 45 minutes into the movie. And Patricia Arquette, who we've seen play one character in the first act, is now playing a different character in the next act. Are they the same character? That's part of the mystery. Are they twins? We don't know.
Yeah.
Did one not exist and the other exists? And this is the reason why this movie is very frustrating for a lot of people. And Mulholland Drive has similar structural challenges as a viewer. But to me, I go, no, this is where dream logic comes in as a storytelling point. How many times have you had a dream where if you try to tell somebody what your dream was, you'd be like, well, it started out and I was a saxophone player in Hollywood and you were my wife, but then all of a sudden, like, you were dead and I got arrested for it. And then I was a mechanic in a garage in Hollywood. And then I met you again. Like, dreams often will take a hard left turn halfway through and suddenly the story narrative completely changes. And you as the dreamer don't stop and go, wait a minute. A second ago, I was a saxophone player. Why am I when it's happening, it makes sense in the dream. It's not until later that we wake up and go, wow, that was such a wild ride I was on.
My rational mind doesn't know what to do with that.
Right.
But there's always, it's understood, right, in dream logic, as you put it, that there's always some form of shape shifting. Like, that's to be expected.
And flexibility.
Yes.
That stories don't all have to add up and they may not go in the direction that you think they're going to go. And certain plot threads are introduced in the first act that never get picked up again. But oftentimes in our nightmares, too, certainly mine, there will be a twist or there will be a return of a figure that began at the top of the dream that I'd forgotten about for a while, you know? So I've just really appreciate his ability to recreate the dream experience in film. And this is not an original thought. I'm pretty sure I thought it was when the light bulb went off when I was about 18. But I remember going, oh, wait, movies are dreams, right?
Yes.
The way they're meant to be experienced is in a movie theater.
Yes.
And you go in and you get your snacks and you get comfy and you tuck in like you're tucking in for bed.
Yes.
And if we want to really play with this metaphor, like the trailers become the story, the story you read before bed.
Sure.
And then the lights dim. You are no longer just yourself. You're in the dark and you're only watching this one story that's projected through light in a dark room. And it sort of replicates the sense of falling asleep and then beginning to dream. And then at the end of the movie goes away, the lights come back on, you're waking back up, you know, and then you tell people and you talk to other people about what you experienced. And
you interpret. Yes.
Yeah, you interpret it. That is replicating dream.
Yes.
And I fully believe that David Lynch is more than aware of this and that one of his driving creative forces is to really follow that structure through beyond just the experience of the theater itself and then make the film, the cinema itself, a dream.
That's right. Well, because that was his method. Like, he would go into the collective unconscious, like swim out into those waters and then just gather these ideas and string them together. But it makes sense that he followed that dreamlike structure because that was how he was working. That was how he was experiencing the material. The fact that he could keep the integrity of that, right? Because it's so slippery. It's just amazing.
And have a handle on it in a way where, especially with a movie like Lost Highway, you're like, wait, is he literally transforming into a different guy? And the answer is yes. He's just literally transforming into another guy. Well,
go with it.
How? Why? That doesn't matter. Accept it on face value and then interpret the rest as it comes, right?
Yes. You have to decide as an audience member. You're like, am I in? Am I on this ride? Am I going with this? Like,
yeah.
Yeah.
Do I need to have like the rules spelled out for me? In David Lynch, no, the rules aren't necessarily there. And I know too, I haven't seen Lynch Oz, but I obviously you see throughout all of his work, you mentioned the curtain, the man behind the curtain, like how Wizard of Oz affects, you know, there's so many Oz references in Wild at Heart and throughout his films. And then, you know, one of the big takeaways is at the end of the movie, Wizard of Oz, she says, oh, I just had a dream. Though, you know, we're led to believe.
Yeah.
and I think it's open for interpretation, that everything Dorothy experienced in Oz was a dream.
Mhm.
And it's another movie where there are characters established in the beginning of the movie who play and take on completely different roles.
Yes.
You know, we have the Cowardly Lion, we have the Tin Man, and we have the Scarecrow, who are all farmers that we're introduced to.
Yeah.
We have the Wizard, who we're introduced to. We have the Witch, who we're introduced to, that are playing two roles in
That's right.
Dorothy's reality. So that happens again in his movies, where characters will transform, they'll shapeshift, they'll become other people.
Yes.
In this particular case, Dorothy says, I had a dream, and you were there, and you were there, and you were there. And she's describing dream logic in that final closing moment.
Absolutely. And who's to say that she wasn't traveling to another realm, right?
Well, that's what's so interesting about that movie, too, that they made that choice, because in the books that they're based on, she literally was traveling to another realm.
Yes.
So the movies add this sort of
Yeah.
bookending justification interpretation for it, which adds this whole new psychological layer to it all that the books did not have. You know?
Absolutely. Yes. I did watch Lynch Oz, and there was so much to take from it.
I need to
but
see
I will
it.
just, you would love it. I will
Yeah.
just add that he had this real fascination with Judy Garland. And so when the mysterious sort of character or force of Judy comes in to the Twin Peaks universe,
Of course.
there's
of course.
all this speculation as to like who Judy was to him, right? And how she represented this darkness underneath the American dream and
Oh,
the
man,
sort of
that makes
American
so
facade.
much sense.
Because
Yeah.
of Judy Garland's actual story and the sort of
Yeah.
tragedy of the figure behind the beloved character and what her life was actually like. So I just had to mention that here.
That's great. I love that. Yeah, I need to watch it. I think Criterion has it out on disc now. I just hadn't gotten around to it yet, but now that he's passed, I'm like, oh, I gotta watch Lynch Oz.
I
You
know.
this is the time to do
And
it.
I need to revisit all of his films, honestly, because while I've seen several of them, it's been a while. And you mentioned that this early on, and I completely agree. I think that there's something about visiting his work at a certain time in your life. For me, I'm approaching this sort of like middle age phase where I'm just asking different questions about what it is to live authentically and what it is to live with purpose. And so I'm excited to engage with his work from a different place than I was when I saw some of this in film school when I was
Totally.
like early 20s.
And also, too, like you've recently gone through a shapeshift of your own, right? I mean, you know, you're a mother now. You're a parent now. I mean, you can probably, I mean, Eraserhead will probably be the most relatable movie of his right now, because Eraserhead is all about, oh my God, I now have to take care of this crying, helpless thing, and I'm overwhelmed, and I don't know, and I'm not sleeping, and I'm like, am I losing my mind? Do I love? Do you know what I mean? Like, I'm not projecting anything on what you're going through in general, but I'm saying
it resonates.
Okay. But like the idea of, and I think particularly that is a movie where he was clearly unprepared to be a father at a young age.
Oh, 100%. 100%.
But it is a thing where I'm just saying that it is interesting to watch movies after you yourself have gone through a major transformation, a life transformation, you know? So yeah, it would be interesting. And I think just to lend some credibility about being the young people watching his movies in their 20s, like that's the other thing about David Lynch, is like his style is really appealing to young people too. Like Eraserhead was cool with teenagers. Twin Peaks was cool with teenagers. There is something about all of his work that does appeal to young people. So even if you haven't gone through life experiences yet, I think one of the things that makes him such a strong filmmaker is he pulls young minds in through style, and he asks them to question the reality around them. And then later you can go back and go, gosh, now that I've lost my mother, I might be able to appreciate what this character is going through in a different way. You know, Straight Story. The Straight Story is a movie that's all about death, impending death, without a character being sick or hospitalized in the movie. It's a movie all about loss and how loss impacts your entire life and your relationships and where you're at. It's such a simple movie, but I had not seen that one until recently.
I know, I haven't seen that.
Oh, you've got to watch it. It's on Disney Plus.
Yeah.
But it's one of these things where it's like, well, it's a rated G movie, and like, how interesting can it be compared to something like Mulholland Drive? And in some ways, it's because it's such a straightforward movie. It's kind of his weirdest movie, right?
Sure.
But you'll see some of the techniques that David Lynch uses in other films. Like, I had a profound experience watching that movie, having recently gone through grief and loss.
Yeah.
And it's a story about tying up loose ends before it's too late, and what sort of burdens we will put on ourselves to maybe right some for atonement, right? To maybe right some past wrongs. And it's told in this very simple way that people will go, what are you talking about? It was just a movie about a man on a tractor, you know, but if you're paying attention to it.
Again, you're working symbolically, right? You're listening to the message underneath the story. Yeah, exactly. You're tuning in to the other elements. That's beautiful.
Also, it's an 82-minute movie, so it's
we love that.
Real easy to get in an hour and a half.
We love a tight 90.
Yeah.
Oh, this is so inspiring, Michael. I knew this was going to be fun, but I'm just all jazzed up and I'm ready to devour some more of his work now. And I hope that those of you listening are as well. Okay, coming to the end of time. I can't believe it, but here we are. Michael, please just tell listeners how they can find you, follow your work. I know they're going to want to engage. You mentioned your podcast, so just give us a little mention, please, so the listeners can follow along.
I have a podcast called Bigfoot Collectors Club, which I co-host with my on-mic producer, Riley Bray. You can find that show. We basically start with Jordan's episode. Jordan was on an episode a couple of years ago around the time Psyche Magic started.
Yeah.
But we talk to creators, actors, writers, comedians about their experiences and thoughts on the paranormal. And then we'll share stories of high strangeness from history. So we cover things like the Roswell crash and the history of Bigfoot. But we also have a Patreon called BCC The Other Side, where we take a little bit more time to unpack the work of people like David Lynch. So we've done a episode recently on Lost Highway. We've done a tribute episode to Lynch over there with actor Eric Edelstein, who was on Twin Peaks. We've covered some of the early Twin Peaks episodes. And so if you're a Lynch fan, he comes up a lot for us over there, especially recently. So go check those out. Bigfoot Collectors Club, wherever you get your podcasts, and then Bigfoot Collectors Club, The Other Side, on patreon.com/Bigfoot Collectors Club.
Absolutely. You guys are going to love what Michael is doing. It's just incredibly fun and just so many really great deep dives.
Thank you.
You know I'm a fan. David Lynch, we love you. We miss you. This was just such a fun, powerful conversation. I'm just like looking at my little Four of Cups man and just like, oh.
I feel like David Lynch, though, is Obi-Wan Kenobi in the sense that, you know, now he's more powerful than ever being in the spirit realm, you know?
Seriously, I think you're absolutely right.
And maybe he's going to be put to great use on the other side now at a time when we would need him over there the most.
There you go. There you go. Yeah. Keep working on us. Keep reminding us what actually matters about being a human being, please.
Raise those vibrations, please.
Oh, we all need it. Hallelujah. Michael, always a pleasure. This was so fun. Thank you so
Jordan.
Much for being here.
Of course, anytime. Absolutely.
That's a wrap for this episode. Thank you again to my guest, Michael McMillian. May you continue to be blessed by catching big fish in the form of creative ideas that fulfill and sustain you. We'll see you back here next month with another amazing guest. If you want more Psyche Magic, be sure to check out the Psyche Magic Salon on Substack. There you'll find all full and bonus episode archives for the podcast, as well as my weekly written newsletter with magical musings and recommendations for sources of creative inspiration. You'll also find the recorded version of our salon ritual to invoke creative flow. That's psychemagic.substack.com. If you haven't already, please take a moment now to subscribe, rate, and review us on your podcast app of choice. It really makes a difference and helps other people find the show. We hope you'll also follow along with our shenanigans on Instagram and TikTok at Psyche Magic Podcast. Psyche Magic was produced and recorded by me, Jordan Hale. Editing for this episode is by Misuzu Inaga. Our theme music is by Young Summer. Artwork is by Annika Murphy. Special thanks go to Daniel Higbee, Grace Fuse, and Michael McMillian. Thank you so much for listening. I'll leave you with a question. If you must sleep through a third of your life, are you willing to sleep through your dreams too? Get your dream journals out, y'all. Until next time.